It seems hard to believe that it was only 10 years ago that this man took power. The big expectation was that a revolution was about to take hold of the country. But what really did happen next? We're going to meet the people of Britain to find out.
Britain has been a money-making machine for a lot of people like myself. When you drive this car, yeah, you certainly feel like a god almost.
We've got the rise in the phenomena of the Nappy Valley.
We do recycle everything.
We got the solar panels put in.
15 years ago, we probably would have been treated as completely mad.
Yeah.
But we're not now.
Tonight, we're meeting the over 50s, who are at the centre of some of the biggest changes.
My hips desperately need replacing, and I've got a low back problem. I don't know why I do it sometimes, because it does hurt when you get it wrong.
It prolongs a whole evening, night, day. I've been known to go 16 hours.
They're having fun. They're having so much fun that the rest of us could end up paying for it.
The ski generation stands for spending the kids' inheritance.
The issue is that baby boomers appear to have had it all, and they appear to be pulling up the ladder behind them.
I still enjoy sex, drugs and rock and roll. It's just that now I feel better able to cope with it.
Alex is 58 and from Kent. 10 years ago, back in 1997, as he neared the big 5-0, he bought the ultimate symbol of the youthful rebel.
A lot of people would say that I'm living a second youth by riding a Harley, but I've never actually stopped being a youth. In here, I'm still an 18-year-old, and in fact, 40 years down the road, I actually feel I've got more physical energy than I ever had actually when I was an 18-year-old. Riding a Harley Davidson, it's an exhilarating feeling. It makes you feel one with the road you're on. It's you, the road, the machine. There's nothing on the planet like it. I don't think there's any other motorcycle that makes you feel quite so cool.
With specially commissioned research and using the latest official figures, we're trying to work out what has really changed in our lives since 1997. 2006 was the first year that there were more people aged 60 and over than 16 and under. And what it means to be old is undergoing a seismic shift, a change led by these people, the baby boomers.
What do you want to dance and hold my hand?
The end of the Second World War led to a surge of optimism across British society. People started having babies.
The arrival of baby becomes a part of everyone's life.
The 10 years after the war saw 1 million more babies born than the decade before. Britain's baby boom.
And here's the stork delivery service. It's nothing for Mr. John Liddington's taxi to be called out 4 times a day for the dash to the maternity home.
The baby boomers moved through life like a whirlwind.
They've lived through the arrival of the pill and free love. They've lived through the liberalisation of the divorce laws and the homosexuality laws. They've lived through the Berlin Wall coming down. So they've really lived through a period of great change and liberalisation, and I think that is very much reflected in their attitudes. You could say, to quote Macmillan, they've never had it so good.
The boomers really are characterised by having been brought up and become adults during a period of unprecedented economic growth and security, and also positivism that the future was going to be better than the past.
The boomer has changed life irrevocably because they have extended middle age, and in fact they eradicated middle age by refusing to admit that it existed. Think about traditional boomers, for example, like David Bowie or Jerry Hall or Iggy Pop or Mick Jagger. These are people that raged right through that bit of life that was meant to make you question things and feel inadequate and suddenly feel worried about your future.
As they party on into old age, it could have a profound and irreversible cost for the rest of us.
The retirement of the baby boomer is unlike the retirement of their parents in almost every way. They're much healthier, they're in much better shape physically, they're much more affluent, they're pretty young in terms of their outlook in life, and they've also got an attitude which is live for today. You know, there are these car stickers saying, I'm busy spending my children's inheritance, but actually it's not a joke.
The issue is that baby boomers appear to have had it all, and they appear to be pulling up the ladder behind them. They've had free education, they've had the welfare state, they've had housing price increases that have provided a kind of safety net for them to do what they want.
People who actually think that I'm suffering a midlife crisis don't know me well enough to realise that I'm just continuing to live my youth. There has never been a point where suddenly it's become midlife crisis time. I will continue to live my life the way I do until they nail the final lid onto my coffin.
Other way. This is a story which the fashion mob are calling monochrome, which is effectively black and white. It was on the catwalks last season, and now this is the high street interpretation, which is what I do for Saga. I like to have everything from Matalan to Max Mara, and somewhere in between. That's great.
Since 1997, we've seen an extraordinary change in how old age looks. 10 years ago, Saga was the embodiment of what it meant to be old and past it. Today, it's anything but. It's one of the first businesses to recognise the transformation in the over 50s market. The big difference is cash. Even though some pensioners remain amongst the poorest in society, as a group, they have seen a big rise in their incomes in the past decade. Pensioners have £60 more to spend each week now than they had in the mid-90s, according to the Department of Work and Pensions. The over 50s account for more than 40% of consumer spending in the UK.
Being old used to mean being poor, and that's why we introduced the state pension system. But that's no longer the case. So with rising property prices and good pension schemes for many people, there are plenty of people who are retiring, who are old by old-fashioned standards, who are actually in really good shape financially. So they've not only got the time and the inclination, they've also got the money.
Apart from all the firsts that we can talk about, marching and burning bras and taking pot and having contraception and HRT and Botox and everything, this woman also was the first, probably the last, to retire on a full state pension because she wanted it all. So she worked through her life. This generation is the last generation to get the final salary pension.
I think people have really forgotten about how powerful the boomer is and how powerful they have become. If you imagine that, for example, in the West, they own about 85% of all disposable incomes and assets. They also own probably, in some cases, 1.2 properties, so not quite 2, but getting there. They also own a huge share portfolio and stock portfolio.
So, they are going to be the richest pensioners ever. But future generations are unlikely to share in their bonanza.
They are having choices in retirement that are unprecedented and cashing in on it. And they have very little desire, it seems to me, to live frugally and give all this money to their children, and I don't really blame them for that.
The ski generation was a term to describe how boomers are spending incomes which traditionally, or spending inheritances which were traditionally there for the children. So the ski generation stands for spending the kids' inheritance. And I think increasingly, because boomers want to live longer, because they want to party harder, and they want to, what they call burn their assets, but use it for themselves, to keep themselves going, they are no longer leaving money to their children or grandchildren.
It's not just cash which is making the older generation powerful. In 1997, the first baby boomer Prime Minister came to power.
We interviewed him on his 50th birthday, and at that point he was in what I call the denial years, which is he was rather appalled to think he'd reached 50 and couldn't understand how he still knew all about rock bands and had reached 50.
In some ways, Blair's the archetypal baby boomer. He's relatively liberal socially. He's been brought up in an era of kind of economic stability. He's a passionate advocate of choice and individuality. He played guitar in a band, and so he's grown up with that generation.
I think New Labour is a very good model of a baby boomer project. Very obviously, the people in power today are middle-aged people who come from radical youth, who were very radical in their youth. Everyone from Peter Hain, even to David Blunkett. This is a generation which was forged at exactly that time. The ages are right. They're all middle-aged. 90% of them are baby boomers, and they were all demonstrating in the early 1970s either against apartheid or between lectures at the LSE about global issues. This is an archetypal political party which went from youthful radicalism to political power in its middle age.
What do we want? A decent pension. When do we want it? Now!
The older generation are not just powerful because the baby boomers are now walking the halls of power. It's also because the old have a disproportionate say over who lives at number 10, with pensioners estimated to be twice as likely to vote as young people.
Any political party which wants to hold the reins of power come the next general election needs to appeal to baby boomers, because these simply are the people who are going to swing the next British general election.
The baby boomers hold a lot of power because they are quite bolshy, very numerous, and rather anti-authority. So, and very individualistic, so they certainly don't like being told what to do. And their concerns, such as the future, their pensions, and things like conditions at work and being able to work on, are very, very important to them. And of course, they are way up the political agenda as a result. I think politically and economically, if people get it wrong with this generation, they're in big trouble.
They've got the money, they've got the power, and they've also got the moves. This is the generation of free love. And the attitudes they are bringing into old age are confounding every preconception we have of growing old quietly.
It's all a whole new ballgame. You know, you've got to go out and you've got to be protected. A lot of women have never had to do that, maybe for a long time. So it's like, oh my God, you know, what do I do here? Oh my God, you know, there's like all these different ones. Which ones do I buy?
When the baby boom generation got married, they thought it would be for life, like their parents. But for many, it didn't work out that way. The numbers of people getting divorced across all ages in England and Wales has decreased since 1991 by 10%. But the over 50s have been bucking this trend with a huge 60% rise in divorce.
Divorce rates have gone up in this group because they're realising that actually, maybe now that the family are growing up, I don't love this person. They don't feel they can't find somebody else. They feel they can and they will find somebody else.
I'm in the mood, baby.
Neil is from Cardiff.
I'm in the mood for love.
He divorced 3 years ago after 24 years of marriage. He's getting ready for a date tonight.
When you're older and single, you tend to look more, and therefore you take more pride in yourself, especially knowing that first appearance is an everlasting appearance.
Angela's also excited about a date she has tonight. She separated from her partner 2 years ago after 25 years together.
What do we know about him? Not a lot, really. Well, he's a really, really nice guy, yeah. He's a lovely guy. He's quite a bit younger than me. But it's nice. Yeah, he's lovely. Met him, he's a local guy, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, we get on really well. It's good fun.
Neil is one of the many people who use dating websites. The first UK site was set up back in 1995, and since then, an estimated 300 more have been established.
Well, I can imagine 15 years ago, before the internet existed, people like myself would probably turn into a hermit or end up as an alcoholic. I met lots and lots of ladies for coffees, some for a drink, and I've actually had a relationship or two which is a direct result of the internet. At the moment, I'm looking at one that sent me a message earlier on today, and hopefully, fingers crossed, that I'm going to try and make a date with her later.
Feels so good.
Viagra has been given its European licence, making it legal for sale throughout the European Union, including Britain.
In 2005, 1.5 million Viagra prescriptions were dispensed.
I don't need it, but I try it, or I tried it, and it's quite funny because it actually does work, even though you may not need it. It prolongs the satisfaction, or prolongs the whole evening, night, day. I've been known to go 16 hours.
These people are having a lot more sex than we'd actually probably feel comfortable with. I think it's possibly the last social taboo, the fact that a 50 to 60-year-old could have sex, because it's the idea of your parents having sex and nobody wants to go there. We found a generation very at ease with their sexuality and very sexually active, wanting to still carry on exploring their sexuality. And you know, we talk to them at length about sex toys, and the men about Viagra, and you know, it's sort of, just because I'm older doesn't mean I'm not going to be interested in sex.
Why not have sex at 50 for God? You know, have sex at 60, have it at 70 if you're capable. You know, life just mustn't stop because of that number. You know, if it feels good, then that's fine, and as long as you're happy and you're comfortable with it, then who's to say you shouldn't?
I must admit, I'm enjoying sex more now, in my 50s, because the taboos are no longer there. You can do things more openly, you can talk more openly, and as a result, you can get sexed up more openly, and I'd say easily.
Angela says she's having more fun than when she was in her 20s.
Hello, Angela.
While the men she's dating really are still in their 20s.
Hello, darling.
If I ever thought, you know, at 50 I was going to go out and meet a guy of 20-something and date him, what? No way.
Both single men and women over 50 are looking for fun. But there may be a difference between the sexes when it comes to commitment.
A lot of women have got the T-shirt on marriage. They've brought up their families. They don't want to get married again, but what they want is a lovely, fulfilling, intimate relationship. However, I think a lot of men who find themselves widowed or divorced in later life are looking for a wife, but I think they're going to be quite hard pushed to find somebody who is prepared to fulfill that role.
I'm looking for somebody that's still got values and virtues, but so far, the one I'm looking for has eluded me. Perhaps it's me not good enough.
fabulous.
Everybody needs to love and be loved.
Yeah.
But I'm not looking for a lifetime partner or somebody, that I want to marry, just, that's it.
The baby boomers were very experimental in their youth. They were up for everything. They were up for love and new ways of living and new ways of working and new ways of indeed not working. And they lived life very much as it came. And this is a characteristic which they haven't lost with age, thank goodness. It makes them a very attractive generation. So it means that they approach old age or older age with all the progressiveness which they came to their youth.
My hips desperately need replacing and I've got a low back problem.
Richard is 64 and lives in Pembrokeshire in Wales. He's a kite surfer.
I don't know why I do it sometimes, because it does hurt when you get it wrong. I just get so excited. Sometimes I feel like I'm boiling inside. In fact, the adrenaline builds up to such an extent. There have been occasions when I have to come in, lie down on the beach, just let my kite float above me. It's just a continual buzz.
Richard's a bit of a legend, really. I first met him about 3 years ago when I moved down here to take on the school. And I just had an enormous amount of respect when I saw him out kite surfing for the first time.
Sometimes the waves come in like bulldozers. That is really scary. You have to enjoy being scared because it's that exciting, particularly when the sea is really big and you're trying to ride the waves, and if you get it wrong, the wave breaks over you.
Believe it or not, a 64-year-old braving the Irish Sea to leap waves while connected by string to a kite is part of a national trend.
Number 14, base jumping.
Research published by Marks and Spencer today suggests that round-the-world travel, going back to school, even extreme sports are the aspirations of more and more people looking forward to retirement.
In the last decade, people of all ages have spent more on experiences, travel, leisure, and culture. In 1998, for the first time, we started spending more on leisure than we did on food. Latest figures from the Office of National Statistics show leisure spending has reached £94 billion a year. And the baby boomers are leading this trend, spending more per head than anyone else.
This is a generation which has very much been associated with the birth of this idea of an experience economy, which is an idea dating from 1998, and the idea that consumers of all kinds are increasingly opting for experiences rather than products. So they want to spend their money on lavish, very sensual experiences which they can talk about endlessly over dinner parties rather than products that they can park outside the front door.
It seems we have so many material goods that we're looking to our wealth to purchase a meaning for our lives as well.
The rise of the experience economy is about the movement from needs to wants in British society as a whole. It's been going on for the last couple of decades and it's been getting faster over the last decade. We've been tracking it year on year by asking people, for instance, do they feel they've got all the material goods they need? And last year we had 62% of the population say, yep, we've got everything we want materially. And in fact, I think now people very much define themselves by the experiences they have as much as by the house and the car that they own.
Once you get to a certain level of material wealth, I think that you start inevitably to look to other things to bring you satisfaction. And I think one of the ironies, perhaps particularly of the baby boomer generation, is that they're the ones who've driven consumerism, but also I think have recognised the limits of it.
Lovely. Good shot. Great.
nearer. I'm just surprised I got it as near as I did.
Roy and Tony may not be the best of golfers, but they're the best of friends.
We've been friends as young children together. Our lives are funny, run in a parallel. I got married to Robbie and he got married to Helen the same year. He has 2 children. One of his children actually has got the same birthday as one of our children, isn't it? Yeah. And we've gone through life. We are close friends.
This isn't a golf course in Britain. Today, Roy and Tony are playing around at their local course on the Costa del Sol in Spain.
The baby boomers are indeed a global generation. They were brought up with the end of the Cold War and they thought very much in global terms then. And travel, they were practically born with passports, so they're much more globally minded than their parents were.
Britain has 5.5 million nationals living abroad. And again, the baby boomers are part of the trend. At the start of the new millennium, people aged between 45 and 64 accounted for 10% of those moving abroad. 5 years later, it's 25%. Roy and his wife Robbie moved to the Costa del Sol nearly 3 years ago from Middlesex in England. They now run a nail salon in Torremolinos. Roy and Robbie are out shopping for a barbecue, and so many Brits have moved to this part of Spain that they won't even have to speak Spanish to get their meat.
Hi, Jeff. Hi, barbecue again. Sausages. Right.
Are they the ordinary ones?
Yeah, the pork. Okay. About 35. They've got about 25. Homemade. Coming over. There are, like, English ghettos. There is areas where it's all English. I mean, you find it hard pushed to find someone who can speak Spanish. I can give you an example. I went into a bar in one of the areas and asked for a cup of coffee in Spanish, and she didn't know what I was talking about. And that is because that is a solely British area.
But it's not just people selling up and moving abroad that has changed the pattern of property ownership since 1997. There has also been an explosion in second home ownership. According to the National Centre for Social Research, between 1999 and 2004, the number of households in England with a second home abroad rose by more than 50%. Older people are 4 times more likely to own a second home than anyone else.
Cheers.
Last year, Roy and Robbie's best friends, Tony and Helen, decided to buy a second home here on the Costa del Sol.
We wanted to be close to our friends who have relocated to Spain and to spend some time with them and to enjoy the sun and just soak up the Spanish atmosphere.
We try to come out about every 6 weeks or thereabouts. We will eventually turn that around. I think at the moment we spend more time in England, but eventually we will be spending more time here and less in England.
The baby boomers love second homes for a mixture of reasons. One is as a purely economic factor, to produce a second income and to invest in the property boom. But also it is this experiential desire, and they love living abroad, they love the weather, and they might go for work.
There's quite a lot of evidence that baby boomers have second homes. Around 16% of baby boomers currently have a second home. And I think that's a fairly recent trend, and it's down to the increase in housing wealth of baby boomers. But I think it's fair to say that the growth in second homes has been quite dramatic in the last 10 or 15 years.
But the explosion in second home ownership means that the younger and poorer generation coming up behind are being priced out of the market.
Because of the affluence that the baby boomers are enjoying, there's a lot of purchasing of second properties, either abroad or in the UK, to either use to get rental income or to have as a holiday home. It's pushing the prices up and it's forcing a younger generation out of the housing market.
According to the Land Registry, the price of the average detached house in England and Wales has gone up by almost 200% since 1996. Property is one of the main reasons why the baby boomers are so much richer than their parents. It's also why they will probably be much wealthier than their children when they come to retire. Like many in Britain, Roy and Robbie made their wealth in the property boom. They bought their house in England for £50,000 and sold it many years later for £450,000, 9 times what they paid for it.
I think we're part of a generation that had the property boom in England, and yet we have more money to spend than I think our parents did.
Well, financially, we were able to do it better. Once we sold the property in England, I mean, when we bought when the house we lived in England, we were there 23 years, and I mean, the increase in value in 23 years is, astronomical. So yeah, it gave us a nice bit of liquid capital, which was great.
Wouldn't it be nice if we were older, then we wouldn't have to wait so long, and wouldn't it be nice to live?
This is leisure in modern Britain. Spas, jacuzzis, and trying to look after your health. And according to market research group Mintel, our love of alternative therapies has seen sales of complementary medicines rise by 44% since 1999. "61-year-old Jennifer Thompson has become part of this trend. It means that now she has chocolate on her face rather than in her mouth, and candles in her ears rather than on the mantelpiece. She's been visiting this luxury gym and spa in Durham for the last 3 years.
Basically, I went through the empty nest syndrome. My children left home, and I had been a full-time mother, and I thought, is that it? What do I do? And I've always been an active, sporty sort of person, so I needed something else to fill my time. As soon as you walk through the doors, you just feel that serenity, and you leave all your problems outside of that door. And it's just a marvellous place to come to. And it's become very much part of my life.
One of the things that we've seen over the last decade is a growing belief amongst British society that they have personal responsibility for the things that government used to take care of in terms of health and education, etc. And I think our focus on well-being is in a small way part of that understanding that we need to take responsibility for our own health.
People who you may not have thought were receptive to alternative therapies or relaxation or massage because they come from a generation where it just wasn't the norm. And now seeing that this sort of thing is available, it's very pleasurable, it's enjoyable, and I suppose as it gets talked about around the dinner table, then their friends are influenced and they come as well.
For Jennifer, this well-being trend is not just about relaxation. It's also about working very hard to stay in shape. In the 6 years after 1998, private gym membership doubled. More than 4 million of us now belong to one.
For every 20 or 30-something who'd really love to be spending a bit more time at the gym or doing a bit more yoga, they might be constrained by their time and their money to indulge in those kinds of things, whereas your 50 and something and 70-year-olds have got much more time, money and actually energy to do it.
One of the reasons that I came to the gym initially was because I felt as though I was starting to get old women's arms, the upper arm, getting flabby and horrible. I thought I've got to do something about that.
Jennifer may have joined the gym to get rid of her fat, but her physique and fitness have been transformed. She can now run for miles quite easily.
A lot of friends say I've become obsessive about it. But I get such a buzz from doing it, and I feel so well and fit.
People are realising that actually age isn't a barrier anymore, because you used to think that when you're 50 you stop doing any activity. That's not the way it is now. There's no barrier. The barrier is how much you want to do. If you want to do the activity, you can actually take part in it.
Madonna, Sharon Stone, those are the role models of these women, that they want to sort of do it without looking like you've had your face stretched behind your ears. So the extreme version of the facelift isn't where they're going, just to sort of look, you know, like you've paid a bit of attention to how you look.
It's not just the women of this generation who want to look good. The baby boomers have always been associated with all things youthful.
There's a personal aesthetic to the baby boomer generation, which I think is driving a lot of the trend towards wanting to look young. But my instinct may be that at any point in history, if we'd given people the choice between looking young and looking old, they would have chosen young. It's just that they had neither the technology nor the resources to make it happen.
I'm 61, and I really don't feel 61. I don't think 61, and I hope, because I work extremely hard at it, that I don't look 61.
Life expectancy in Britain has been on a continuing upwards trend. Even since the mid-1990s, it has risen by 2 years to 79. Some people believe science is on the verge of breakthroughs which could see that figure dramatically increase. Today, 61-year-old John Mansfield is visiting a private clinic in London's Harley Street to meet Mr. Prakash, a consultant offering a new treatment he calls age management medicine. It's all designed to enhance your health in old age and maybe, just maybe, make you live a little bit longer.
Mr. Prakash, can I ask you a question? How long does it actually last, this management system?
I'll be very honest with you, it's a lifetime.
A lifetime, yeah.
A lifetime process.
Yeah.
It is not something like you come for an insurance test and go away. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's an ongoing lifetime process. Like when you buy a car, how long are you going to service the car? Scientifically, the one thing is proven categorically, very firmly now, is calorie restriction. Taking less good quality food is the only way of extending your life. Really? Or reducing your aging process. So at the moment, if you ask me, give me one advice to extend my life in a quality way, is restricting your calorie.
Mr. Prakash believes that developments in stem cell and gene therapy combined with a healthy diet and lifestyle could push life expectancy to well over 100 years of age in the future.
The extension can go up to 120, 150, but it depends upon the rapidity of the advancements in science and the application process and the ethics in life. Okay, a gentle test, sir.
No, it's okay.
But if this science fiction becomes science fact and many more of us start living to over 100 years of age, will we be better off?
There's a lot of money at the moment being pumped into research into biomedicine and trying to extend the life course. And it really all depends upon whether people will have the resources to back that up, whether they'll be richer and fitter in old age and be able to take the advantages of that, or whether we'll simply have a population which is living longer but will be more disabled.
There are almost 10,000 people in Britain aged 100 years or older, and the proportion of pensioners in Britain is set to double.
Thank you, Mr. Prakash.
In the year 2000, 24% of the population were over 65. But by the time we reach the year 2050, that's going to increase to 47%.
So what are we going to do with our growing number of old people? There is a possible answer. In the last decade, Britain has been importing this solution from the United States. In this village, you can be any colour, any religion, you just can't be any age. Retirement villages in the US are big business. Sun City in Florida has over 11,000 residents. Could this be our future? That was the Sunshine State. This is how they do it in Yorkshire. Oaks opened in 1998. It's a retirement community in York, and it's being hailed as a model for how the future could and maybe should look. The number of retirement communities in Britain has doubled since 1997.
Some people would argue that communities like age-segregated communities are a bad thing, full stop. They're inherently ageist and they're dreadful places and that old people shouldn't be herded off. My attitude is, well, people should have the choice. We're very good at telling older people what's best for them and what they should and shouldn't do.
John and Jennifer Mitchell moved to Yorkshire Oaks 3 years ago. They are both in their 60s.
People come here thinking it's going to be a fairly sedentary, quiet old people sitting around watching television and being elderly. And often we bring younger people up here and thrash them at table tennis. And we take great pleasure in that.
They chose a retirement community because of their own experience of what it was like to care for sick and dying loved ones.
I was a carer and jointly we were carers. My parents lived with us for 28 years, but it was only the last 10 years that were really full hands-on care. But I was registered carer for both my parents.
It seems to me quite unfair that my wife, having given a chunk of her life to her parents, they might give a chunk of her life to me if I was poorly, which seemed quite unfair.
Old people are expensive. According to the Office of National Statistics, people aged over 65 accounted for nearly half of England's total spending on hospital and community health services in 2002, even though they are only 16% of the population. The residents of Yorkshire Oaks and other places like it won't be such a burden on the taxpayer. Everybody who buys a bungalow here also pays a flat fee, which is used to fund any care they need until they die.
The money doesn't change, so you know exactly what's going to happen in terms of your care and how that's going to be paid for. And it's a bit of a gamble. You might be perfectly well and never need any kind of looking after, or you might be catastrophically ill the day after you walk through the door and need care for the rest of the time you're there.
Eric Henderson and his wife Margaret moved in 4 years ago when they were in their late 70s.
I've had need to use that care on 2 occasions. 3 occasions now. Twice I've collapsed with TIAs, mini stroke or very mini strokes. There's been a nursing care and a care manager here within 2 minutes.
Most people don't need long-term care. They usually live to an age, have a fairly short acute illness and pass away. But a good proportion of people do need it. And you know, all of us have to make our own decisions in the sense of how much we want to provide for that future ourselves or take responsibility for it.
But there is a problem with Yorkshire Oaks. It's not the quality of care, it's not that people don't enjoy living here. It's that residents have one other thing in common, apart from their age. They all have plenty of money.
I think the future is going to be, for a lot of people, quite a frightening place. If you're a boomer with money, you will live in a pretty hermetically sealed, gated, well-maintained, technologically astute community, which will monitor everything around you to ensure that you're healthy.
Unfortunately, you know, it is not within everybody's means to be able to come. But they could improve many of the places they have got already. I have a friend who unfortunately is the same age as me and is crippled with arthritis, but she cannot have the care that we've got.
The number of pensioners living in poverty has dropped by over 1 million since 1997, according to the Institute of Fiscal Studies. But latest figures show that more than 1.5 million pensioners are still living below the poverty line.
I think one of the myths about baby boomers that's important to debunk is the idea that they're all wealthy.
Being poor and old is not a great experience. I mean, you're being betrayed by your body. You are not being given the economic resources that you need to live a decent life. So in many ways, for the most disadvantaged people in our society, everything begins to fall apart and they become very vulnerable.
And as our public services become ever more pressurised by the demographic time bomb, those not rich enough to buy private care might become ever more disadvantaged.
The poorest baby boomers are going to struggle. Because there's more of them, there's more pressure on public services, on state services like the NHS, like public transport, like formal and informal care, like housing provision.
The danger could be that for those people who rely on the support of the welfare state, if you like, that services may not be able to develop at the same rate, and that there may, you know, a danger of a quite serious sort of two-tier sort of system for those who can provide for themselves and those who can't.
If you are old and poor, then there's your pension and healthcare to pay for, and someone's going to have to foot the bill.
People are going to be poorly over quite long periods because we have new medicines and technologies that will keep people going that bit longer. So to expect a sort of shrinking number of young taxpayers to pay for that is unrealistic, and I certainly don't expect to be retiring at 65.
Oh, it's tougher for you lot. There's no job for life nowadays.
The competition's intense. You all want the best jobs.
It's all so much more stressful.
And you can't relax for a moment. There's always more things to learn.
But what do we care? We're retired.
There is a danger that the maths just won't add up, and that the young might not stand for having to work their lives away so that the baby boomers can carry on living their lives of leisure.
People in their 20s and 30s will not be able to retire as early as their parents, so the expectation of working from 25 to 55 and then living the life of Riley to 95 will be a no-no for the next generation. They're going to have to work longer and probably going to have to save more as well, but it's working longer which is going to be the key.
I think it is perfectly possible that one of the big political divides of the future will not be left or right, but it will be young and old, precisely because one generation has taken out so much more from the system than it's put in, and another generation will be potentially resentful about picking up the price tag for that.
We're seeing signs in the US and Europe where young people are already objecting to their parents retiring on good pensions at 55, retiring in good health on good pensions at 55, and those workers are beginning to say, hang on a minute, we are not on course for such a good retirement ourselves. Why should our parents be taking so much out of the system? Initially, I think workers will use economic tools at their disposal, but there's a real danger that we will see a dichotomy between political power and economic power. Older people tend to vote, young people don't. Young people will use either their economic power or their physical muscle to get their way.
So what might the young do about this? Are we looking at a situation where civil protest will not be against fox hunting and the petrol tax, but could be against old people instead?
There's a number of options open to young people. Firstly, they might quit the country to avoid supporting their elders. They might try and work in the black economy to hang on to more of the wealth that they create. And if all else fails, they might take to the streets. We've seen people take to the streets to get rid of poll tax. We might see young people taking to the streets to get rid of pension tax.
The sorrow when our love was breaking up, the memory of a broken heart.
There is one sure way of no longer being a burden on the state.
to part.
Even the baby boomers must face the inevitable at some point. And just as they have tried to take control at every stage of life, will they do the same at the end? The past 10 years have seen increasing debate over how to live a good death.
I think as the boomers age, we're going to see a fundamental reappraisal of the experience of death. If you think about the boomers and what characterises them, it's the fact that with every life stage they've reassessed it, reappraised it and made it their own. And the focus has very much been on them living a good life full of rich experience. Death becomes the ultimate part of this really, and the natural end of a well-lived life is a positive experience as much as possible around death.
Geoffrey Hilliard is a 76-year-old. He's fit and healthy, but as he's got older, he has become more aware of his own mortality.
Death is something that happens in Iraq, but I mean, well, you see it on television, but it doesn't. Not until you're old. And so this state of denial creeps in, you see.
Geoffrey has decided that if illness robs him of his quality of life, he wants to exercise choice over when he'll die.
I think choice makes us human. I mean, I don't think, when I see a woodlouse come out of the corner there and walk across, I don't think it's got an awful lot, well, it could go one way or the other, but it hasn't got much choice. And, well, the more choice you have, in many respects, and the more choice you exercise, the more human you are.
And we are becoming more prone to terminal illness. There was a rise of 20% in the number of cases of cancer registered in England between 1997 and 2004. And Geoffrey has had painful personal experience of what modern medicine can mean for the terminally ill. When his stepmother was diagnosed with cancer, the effects of keeping her alive were shocking.
They operated. As far as I can see, they took out virtually all the gut. Certainly, she had no pain. But for the last 6 months of her life, she was in nappies. And her nappies needed to be changed anything up to 10 times a day. I'm sorry, I weep at the thought of that.
He compares the experience of his stepmother in the modern age with what happened to his natural mother when she suffered with cancer in the 1930s.
Eventually, Father said to the doctor, "Can't you do something?" And the doctor said yes, because he knew there was no hope. There was no such thing as chemotherapy or radiotherapy. They didn't exist. And I understand that my mother was dead within 24 hours.
Having made the decision to die at a time of his choosing, Geoffrey has also decided how he will do it.
This is my favourite piece of music.
He has bought 2 cylinders of a gas, which when inhaled, will kill him.
I put this over my head so far. That's right. Just down as far as my ears. And from this pipe here, it inflates. I'm going to now try and empty my lungs of as much oxygen as possible. So I'm going to exhale. Very difficult thing to do. I always have to inhale first.
Geoffrey bought his cylinders 2 years ago. He is not suicidal, but he is keeping the gas until, or if, he feels that his health is too poor to have a good quality of life. Diane Pretty's battle to be given the right to die made the issue of euthanasia one of the key moral debates of the past decade. According to the British Social Attitudes Survey, 80% of people in Britain think that a doctor should be allowed to end the life of someone who has a painful terminal illness.
The whole debate around euthanasia, around what sort of care that you want and how you actually want to manage your transition from being old to dying and how to manage that best for everybody around you. It's become more of an area of discussion, and death is still a relatively taboo subject. Over the next decade, it's an area that's going to come to the forefront, and we'll have a lot more say and a lot more control over what we want to happen.
The future of death is quite a curious and interesting area. On one level, I think boomers being very selfish and very self-aware and self-concerned, as soon as they realise they are dying, they will not want to prolong the inevitable. In fact, it's one of the few areas they will not want to prolong. So you will see a growth in the whole sector of voluntary euthanasia clinics.
I'm determined to die while I've still got control. I'm watching myself. When my doctor says I need extra statins, I think, well, I'll take those because then that lowers my cholesterol, so I'm less likely to have a heart attack. That's an insurance, I'll keep control. But, well, I can't do what I could do a year ago. And if it goes on like that, I should think, oh, can't be bothered, can't be bothered.
What will our baby boomers leave as a legacy for those following them? They are unlikely to leave much money, and paying for their old age could mean the next generation working late into their lives.
That next generation might not look too kindly on the amount of wealth which they create, which is being creamed off by their parents, particularly if their parents are enjoying a much better standard of living in retirement.
They may not be inheriting their cash, but perhaps what the young can take from the boomers is a lesson in attitude.
This is a generation which showed us very defiantly that it is possible to change the world, and they very much try to do that. And that's a very important thing in a contemporary society in which young people have lost any kind of desire or belief that it is possible to change the world.
And it's an attitude that they are taking into old age, confronting it head-on, as they have with every stage of life.
I don't think anyone wants to grow old. I certainly don't. Mentally, I don't feel any older than 30. I've got a few more experiences, which I didn't have at 30, but I just really don't want to be old.
You can come back when I'm 70. Maybe my eyesight will be better. And check me out with my new hips.
There's this rumour about life beginning at 40. I think probably 60 or 70 is when life's really going to begin for me. There's a wonderful line, it's not actually mine, but I heard it recently. I thought I can identify with it. Literally, the line goes, if you're not living on the edge, you're taking up too much space.